Welcome back everyone to Data Science for Everyone. Today we're going to be talking about exploratory data analysis. Particularly we're going to be starting to create a checklist for your EDAs. So today we're going to be utilizing some craft beer data, and we'll go through about how you need to start looking at your analyses. So first off, let's talk about making some sort of proposal. Okay, so we need to generate questions about your data. And your goal during your EDA is going to be to develop an understanding of your data. And then the easiest way to do this, again, is to use questions as tools to guide you through your investigation. When you ask a question, okay, the question focuses your attention on a specific part of your data set. And this is going to allow you to decide which graphs or models or transformations to make in the future. Now, so let's look, and we need to frame the big problem, and we need to look at this big picture aspects, okay? So let's think about this in business terms, okay? Define your objective. So we're wanting to maybe make a microbrewery in the United States. How is my solution going to be used? And this is all before you even get your data. This is you just creating your idea. How is your solution going to be used? Okay, if you're using machine learning products, how's that going to be used? Now, since I'm just doing this for an exploratory data analysis, my findings are actually going to be used on what type of beer maybe I should brew to sell. So maybe talk about how much alcohol by volume, the style of beer, how bitter it is, how many ounces to sell, and maybe even what the name should be for this data set. What are the current solutions or workarounds? Well, many brewmeisters in the world, okay, simply brew a beer and sell it. I want my beer to be statistically sellable in this instance. So how should you frame this problem? Well, I'm going to look at both continuous as well as categorical data. How should my performance be measured? Now, again, if we're looking at machine learning models, this would be with your MSE, RMSE, R squared, looking at, again, depending on you're doing classification analysis or not. Since we're currently using the exploratory data analysis, basically, if I'm successful in generating insights for my business, I believe that'll be a success. Now, is this performance measure going to be aligned with any business objectives? Yes, of course it is, because I'm wanting to create a brewery that is statistically sellable. So the next part of this is, what would maybe be the minimum performance needed for this business objective? Well, I should at least narrow down the most popular types of beer, as well as their alcohol content. What are comparable problems? Can you reuse experience or tools? Well, there are similar analyses that have been done on a variety of products, okay, for many different industries. Again, this is like marketing analysis, cost-benefit analysis, any types of analyses of that sort. And again, is there human experience available? Yes, of course. I can talk to several brewmeisters about their craft beer, as well as talk to patrons of other establishments to see what types of beer they actually feel like, as well as the locations that they like to travel maybe to see their beers and get their beers. So how would you solve this problem manually? Again, I would maybe kind of do this trial and error. I would create a beer, sell a beer, and see maybe whether it sells really well, people like it or not. And again, start with maybe the easiest type to brew, and then maybe something that I prefer to drink myself. So let's also maybe list assumptions, okay, for me or others have made so far. Well, again, I'm assuming that maybe people are going to like more of a classic beer, like an American IPA. Again, maybe not too bitter, not too light, and the alcohol content is going to be probably relatively average, okay? They're not going to want their beer too alcoholic, with a high alcohol content. So let's verify our assumptions if possible. Again, we're going to have to look at the data to find out. Now, the next part of this, okay, remember, up until this point, we have never had data, okay? This helped us gain what type of data that we want, so we start with our data selection, okay? So now, when we're getting the data, we need to make sure and automate as much of this as possible, okay? Ergo, we're going to need to make functions. We need to make this into maybe a report-style format. So let's list the data and how much we need. Okay, well, I need data on beers and breweries in the United States. I need to find and document where I got the data. Okay, well, I know that I can get this data from the scraping of craft beers, as well as the same data here from Kaggle. And I also made sure that I made these, again, if I'm doing this in a file or a web page or like this is a presentation. Okay, I would also make these hyperlinks so then people can always go and grab my data. So let's check how much space I need. Well, I'm going to approximately need 200 kilobytes of space to at least to perform this analysis. Again, these are small data sets. They're basically CSV's text data. But again, if for example you were doing some huge data mining operation, okay, and you may need several, maybe even a terabyte or a petabyte of data if you're working for one of the big companies, that may be something you need. Okay, but you need to take stock of how much space it will take potentially, and also how much space you have available to you. Maybe you need to subsample your data in order to get something started right away. So we also need to check legal obligations and get authorization. Again, it's legal for me to use this data, and I have the license agreement that you can see. You can, people can go on, feel free to click on that and search for it. Now, we also need to make sure, for example, we need to get authorization accesses, okay? In a previous life, I worked for a bank. Again, I couldn't just take people's account data and start running analyses on it. I needed to make sure and go through verification processes and get legal authorization. So again, for this though, I grabbed the data from Kaggle, so I signed up the profile with Kaggle, and then therefore I'm going to have legal access. Again, you can see the legal licenses for the data here. We need to create a workspace with enough storage. Well, I created an R project with RStudio. If you're going to be using Python, for example, you can make a Jupyter notebook, you can make an AWS instance. Maybe you're using Databricks, so use Databricks to create your instances as well. Again, it's use whatever tools that you feel necessary in your life. Right now, this current series is we're working with R, so I'm going to be using RStudio. So get the data. Okay, so we have the data. All right, and that would be also we need to convert it into a format that we would like to have. Okay, so we need to be able to import our data, and again, we need to keep these stored somewhere else without manipulating the original data itself. Again, since Kaggle has this stored on a server online, we know that that data is not going to change, but I also will keep a copy on my hard drive that has never been edited or changed, and then we will use those edits concurrently in order to save time. Make sure sensitive data is deleted or protected. Again, there's no sensitive data in here. If, for example, you have bank employee data or you have a survey and you have people's names, you need to make sure and anonymize those. If you have questions on that, you guys can always feel free to reach out to me and I can help you with those as well. So check the size and type of your data. So whether it's a time series, geographical, or whatever. And again, let's take a look at the data. So we see here that the data set itself is, we have a lot of numeric data, and here I have examples of the data. So we can see that they're numeric. Again, this one is probably going to be a double or a float. We have characters, and so for example, here's maybe, this is, again, this is the variable name, so we have the name, so the name of the beer, okay? The style, again, is going to be a pumpkin ale. And then we also have, for example, a brewer ID and the number of ounces. And then we have some mystery column here, and we will dive into that shortly. We also see that this particular data set here, okay, is going to have 328.4 kilobytes in size, so it's not going to be very big. And then we also have here our breweries data set. This is a secondary data set. This is 90.4 kilobytes. Again, all of this is actually character data, okay, or string data. So again, it has the name of probably this one with the name is probably going to be the name of the brewery, okay, it's not the beers, the city and the state in which the value is created. And again, we have some mystery data right here, and we will dive into that later on. So this type of data, again, is going to contain data from canned beers from, again, breweries in the United States. It is not really clear from the website if the data reports every single canned brewery in the United States or not, so we can't say anything about that otherwise. Now, to be safe, I'm going to basically consider that this data set is a sample that may contain some biases. Okay, so then also whenever we've already talked about the data itself, but we haven't actually said what each of the variables represent. So we have this first one is ABV. This is alcohol content by volume. 0 meaning there's no alcohol. 1 is basically pure alcohol. The IBU is the International Bittering Units. Again, this would describe how bitter a drink is. We have name, which is the name of the beer. And again, this is for the the beer data set, okay, or the beer table. And we also have a style. Okay, and so this is the beer style, a lager, ale, IPA, etc. And then we're also going to have a brewery ID. This is a unique identifier for the breweries that produces this beer. And then we have ounces. So again, this is the size of beer in ounces. Now, later on, we should probably convert this to milliliters because a lot of the world uses milliliters. And it's a little bit more comfortable to do some analyses in that as well. And we may look at, for example, changing these maybe international bittering units, or maybe this alcohol by volume. My guess is it's a decimal right now. We may want to change it to a percent later on for visual simplicity. And then we talk about the breweries themselves. We have a brewery ID, and this is a unique identifier for the brewery that produces the beer. We have the name of the brewery. We have the city the brewery is located in, and then we also have the state and the state the brewery is located in. This is probably one of the most important things that you can actually do with a data set, okay, is actually kind of creating yourself a code book. Okay, so you have the actual ID and the label. Again, these are edited from what I showed you earlier because these are what I'm going to be calling them whenever I'm doing my analysis. And then you have with it a nice identifier, okay? And I have this in a table on my computer where I am able to kind of take a look at what I need and how I need to discuss the data. So this will get you all the way through and up to starting to do exploratory data analysis. In the next video, we'll actually go through how to write up an exploratory data analysis as a full report, as well as we'll go through the code on how to create those some nice visualizations, and also how to do the statistics that we're interested in. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked it, make sure and share, comment, and again, subscribe, guys. Thanks. Bye.